All right, we stay with this theme and look at what Mkhwanazi has said, right? He says that in 2011, he deposited an affidavit with the Zondo Commission, but was never invited to testify, adding that patterns and modus operandi used in crime intelligence back then still exist today. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Back in 2011, I deposited an affidavit at the Zondo Commission. That affidavit is available. Unfortunately, I was never invited to come and testify at the Zondo Commission. So the patterns that were there, the modus operandi of how they are dealing with things at crime intelligence back then, it still exists today. So what we see here is a person who has a legal obligation to keep the mouth shut and go to the Joint Standing Committee and present and ventilate on this and hold the Divisional Commission accountable. But she does not use that platform. She goes publicly and discloses this. The risk of this, commissioners, is that it forces the members that are within crime intelligence in the public space to defend themselves by divulging all the secrets of the states that they are aware of, the irregularities within crime intelligence that ranges from the police to the political parties, which the members are not supposed to, according to their vetting and their classification of that information. The platform they have to vent that is within the Inspector General of Intelligence and Parliament, Joint Standing Committee of Intelligence. So that's why a provincial commissioner like myself, General Mkhwanazi, I'm not invited to the Joint Standing Committee because I've got no business with that budget. It is the Divisional Commission of Crime Intelligence that has an access to the Joint Standing Committee to go and account, because he's the one that is classified to be there and deal with the matter. So we demonstrate here that the Ms. Kola Barnard have acted, and the Inspector General of Intelligence, we have evidence of that he's part of the instrument of investigating the things or counter-investigation of the things that the team are doing within intelligence. So that's what I thought maybe I must bring forward without going more into details. As I said earlier, these are some of the things that J.R. Kumal is going to come here and is going to elaborate more of what actually is contained on this Gauteng counterintelligence investigation, who is involved, and how the counter, what is the role that the Inspector General of Intelligence is playing in trying to frustrate this project.
All right, we speak now to legal expert and senior lecturer in the Department of Procedural Law at the University of Pretoria, Dr. Llewelyn Curlewis. Good evening to you, Doctor, and thank you so much for your time. I want to start with the first part of what the KwaZulu-Natal Commissioner says. He says that he deposited an affidavit at the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. One would have thought, with where we find ourselves right now, possibly maybe he could have been called back then to come and clarify some of the issues he was raising about crime intelligence. Had he been called, a few years ago after he sent them that particular affidavit, do you think we could have avoided this moment where we find ourselves in as a country?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. The bottom line is hindsight is always a better way of looking at things. It's difficult to pronounce what the outcome would have been if we presented that evidence before the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. But that being said, at the end of the day, I don't think it would have made a different outcome. We've seen the results of the Zondo Commission. What General Mkhwanazi have explained and added today at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry is nothing but add fuel to the already existing fire out there. General Mkhwanazi so far expressed belief that both the Office of the Inspector General of Crime Intelligence and the investigating directed against corruption are all at some degree or another obviously captured. Now, those are extremely serious claims. We don't have access to the dossiers that the commissioners are sitting with, and have almost up to now not seen anything in the way of hard evidence presented by Mkhwanazi himself. So obviously, this is early days. It's premature to determine what the outcome would be. But so far, he's sketching a mammoth conspiracy theory taking place in the police services, in implicating officers, MPs, cabinet ministers. Names have been dropped like Diane Barnard, Adams. We've just listened to one of the interviews with her and the allegations against her, and so on. So all in all, it's a bleak picture that is sketched out there.
Yeah, and briefly then, before we move on to the next part, right, one would ask, is this an indictment, if at all, when it comes to the Zondo Commission of Inquiry, given the fact that now we know he says, that's what he says, that he deposed this affidavit and they would have been sitting on this kind of information, possibly?
No, I don't think so. I mean, at the end of the day, the Zondo Commission of Inquiry could have elaborated and gone on for another 10 years, if you ask me. I mean, at some stage, there must be a cut-off day, budget constraints, resources, and so on. So whether another witness or another 100 witnesses would have made a difference in the long run, I doubt it. But like I say, the proof is in the pudding for what is to come. For now, I cannot see that this evidence or the evidence and the affidavits that allegedly is in his possession confirming certain allegations that he would or would not be willing to disclose going forward. Whether that would have made a difference to the Zondo Commission, I doubt it. And
speaking about the proof, right, as you say, I wonder because the Commission is going to have to possibly recommend, some matters maybe to the NPA or the police and all of that. But I wonder, when it comes to the NPA, how much work will, that organization, for example, need to do, especially when it comes to investigations, given the requirements of admissibility when it comes to evidence?
Yeah, the problem with commissions of inquiry is they can make recommendations. And obviously, some of the recommendations can immediately be implemented. It's self-explanatory that if it's a practical issue that is suggested, then that can be immediately implemented. But for the majority of the recommendations, there will be oversight by the Parliament ultimately, and many of these issues and evidence might even be challenged in our courts with review applications to determine and scrutinize whether it is actually worth something. Remember that we do not have the ordinary rules of evidence that's applicable during commissions of inquiry. So the weight to be attached to that evidence that is laid before a commission of inquiry can sometimes be frowned upon. We've just listened to Diane Barnard suggesting that all these allegations are fabrications of imagination and so on. So as far as I'm concerned, until and unless there are proper cross-examination that to test the veracity of the allegations, I don't think we're going to see much weight and that we can attach to that evidence ultimately going forward.
What does it mean then for criminal prosecutions? And I ask this because if we take a step back and we think of what happened post the Zondo Commission of Inquiry, we know the investigations that still, as we are told in some cases are ongoing, but South Africans will then say we still aren't seeing enough people behind bars for what has happened there. So if then listening to what you're saying is then indeed the case, what does it mean?
Yes, I totally agree with your last observation. I mean, the words currently pronounced and the evidence pronounced by General Mkhwanazi finds favor and fertile ground in the general public. I mean, this is the type of words that members of the public wants to hear to see that politicians get what they deserve. But at the end of the day, it must be tested, scrutinized in a court of law, and there must be prosecutions following such recommendations, and people must be behind bars, otherwise it boils down to nothing, absolutely nothing. That is nothing but taxpayers' money is going down the drain once again. And that is my major concern. We are spending lots and lots of taxpayers' money, months of investigative work, resources that get spent on commissions of inquiry, but ultimately we hardly ever see any possible prosecutions taking place that results from the outcomes and the recommendations of these commissions of inquiry. And that is my gripe with the specific entities.
And I suppose it would be, it would actually be a very difficult pill to swallow if we do not see the changes, because the president tonight says to my colleague Mzwandile Mbeje that post this commission and the report then comes out, we can expect that, he says, it's going to lead to a number of changes. I'm listening to what you're saying. Doesn't sound like you're holding your breath, that it could.
Yeah, absolutely. I do agree with that sentiment raised. We have the same observations were made by our president after the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. A lot of promises, but ultimately nothing in reality working out at the end of the day. We are still waiting for all these, all the implementations of those recommendations. We're still waiting for positive prosecutions taking place. Yes, here and there we see results, but it's few and far between. And my gut feeling is, if I have to anticipate, and I don't want to play devil's advocate here, but at the end of the day, I do foresee we're going to have the same results forthcoming out of this Commission of Inquiry.
I shudder to think what that would mean for South Africa. Thank you so much, Doctor. Appreciate your time this evening. That was legal expert and senior lecturer in the Department of Procedural Law at the University of Pretoria, Dr. Llewelyn Curlewis.